Is Patrick Mahomes about to lose the one thing that made him worth drafting last season? Because if you strip away his legs, what you're left with might not be the quarterback you think you're getting in the 10th round. Let's talk about it. Back in 2023 and 2024, Mahomes finished as Fantasy's QB10, not QB1, not top 5, QB10. And that was with the exact same group of pass catchers he's rolling with right now. Same hands, same route runners, same limitations. None of that was really his fault. The talent around him just wasn't getting it done, but the box score doesn't care about blame. It only cares about points. And for 2 straight seasons, the points landed him outside the range fantasy managers actually want from a guy they're spending a premium pick on. Then last year happened. He comes back, and suddenly he's putting up a career-high 30 rushing yards a game. Not 30 for the season, 30 per game. That number alone rewrote his entire fantasy profile. Meanwhile, look at what happened to the rest of that top 10 quarterback list from the years before. Guys who were consistently outscoring him, several of them landed on injured reserve. So Mahomes finally has a real, legitimate, healthy season where everything clicks. And it happens to be the one year he leans on his legs more than he ever has in his career. That's not a coincidence. That's the whole story. Now here's where I get skeptical about repeating that. Coming off a torn ACL, I don't think that kind of rushing season is realistically on the table again. And it's not just the injury. You add Kenneth Walker into that backfield, and the entire math changes. Andy Reid finally has a running back he can actually trust to carry a real workload, which means the incentive for Mahomes to tuck it and run drops even further. Why would you ask your quarterback, who is coming back from a major knee injury, to expose himself on scrambles when you now have a legitimate ground game option sitting right there on the depth chart? I also don't think we're heading back to the version of this offense that led the league in pass attempts. That team existed because they didn't have other answers. This team is different. The interior of that offensive line is genuinely dominant now. The kind of unit that lets you lean run heavy and control the clock instead of asking your quarterback to throw 50 times a game. Combine that with Mahomes managing a return from a torn ACL, and a running back Andy Reid can finally lean on, and you've got every ingredient for a more conservative, ground-controlled offense, not an explosive pass-heavy one. And then there's the receiving room, which is still the same story it's always been. Whatever you want to call this group, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, and an aging Travis Kelce, it's just not a unit that scares anybody or forces defenses into uncomfortable coverage decisions. If I'm not drafting Rashee Rice in this range, I'm also not reaching for his quarterback either. I'd rather use that pick to stack value somewhere else on my roster. And for anyone out there trying to push Mahomes higher up draft boards this year, I genuinely don't see the case for it. Not when you've got options like Jared Goff, Malik Willis, or Kyler Murray sitting in that same range. Pick any one of them. I honestly don't care which. The point stands the same. There's no strong argument for reaching on Mahomes over a comparable option purely based on name recognition. Let's actually put some numbers behind this instead of just vibes. Look at every quarterback last season who started at least 10 games. Mahomes finished 4th in rushing yards per game at just over 30. Let that sink in for a second. That's more rushing production per game than Lamar Jackson put up, more than Jaden Daniels, more than Jalen Hurts. 3 guys who are drafted specifically because of their legs, and Mahomes outrushed all of them on a per-game basis. Now flip over to rushing touchdowns. He finished 5th in the entire league in total rushing scores. And remember, that was across only 14 games played, while the 4 guys ahead of him on that list played 16, 17, 14, and 17 games respectively. So on a rate basis, without even mentioning garbage time sneaks near the goal line, he was keeping pace with players who are considered the gold standard for rushing upside at the position. That's the part people forget when they talk about Mahomes as a pure pocket passer. Last year, he wasn't just scrambling occasionally to extend a play. He was scrambling as a legitimate weapon, picking up chunks of yardage and finding the end zone with his legs at a rate that rivaled the most mobile quarterbacks in football. So when I say I'm skeptical of that, continuing, I want to be clear about what I'm actually saying. I'm not saying he suddenly forgets how to throw. His arm talent in the passing game is elite regardless of who's running routes for him. That part of his game has never been the concern. What made last season different, what unlocked that extra ceiling, was the legs. That's the variable that turned him from a low-end QB10 into a legitimate weekly difference maker. And that's exactly the variable I think regresses hard this year. A guy coming off a torn ACL, an offensive coordinator who now trusts his running back more than he ever has, and an offensive line built to control tempo on the ground rather than push the ball downfield 40 times a game. Put those three things together, and I would be genuinely surprised if his scramble yardage even reaches half of what it was last season. And if that number gets cut in half, or worse, you're not talking about a top 5 rushing quarterback anymore. You're talking about a guy who's back to relying purely on a receiving core that still hasn't proven it can carry a passing attack on its own. So before you let last year's box score convince you to bump him up your rankings, ask yourself honestly which version of Mahomes you're actually drafting. Are you drafting the guy who ran for 30 yards a game and found the end zone with his legs at an elite rate? Or are you drafting the guy who needed 2 full seasons of a shaky receiving room to remind everyone why he was stuck at QB 10 in the first place? Because right now, coming off a major knee injury, with a running back finally taking carries away from him, and an offense that's built to run the ball more not less, I think you're drafting the second version. And in a range loaded with quarterbacks who offer similar or better weekly upside without the injury risk or the offensive shift working against them, I don't see the argument for treating Mahomes as anything more than a mid-pack option this season. Let me know where you've got him ranked, and if you think I'm underselling the recovery, drop that take in the comments because I want to hear the counter-argument.